Welcome to the BumbleKast. I'm your host, Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, and joining me as always is my Bumble co-host, Kyle, JCRB Krause.
Hello, Ian. Hello, everyone. We got someone on board today, but man, this is gonna be good. It's gonna be good. How you doing,
That's
Ian?
right, I'm hanging in there. How about you, sir?
Good. Not too bad.
Well, good, because we've got another guest episode this week. If you would like to be a guest here on the BumbleKast, it's super easy. Become a $100 patron over at patreon.com/BumbleKast. Send us $100 worth of coffee over coffee.com. That's ko-fi.com/BumbleKast. Contact us at BumbleKast@yahoo.com if you want to just directly send funds and you don't want to mess with a middleman. Completely understand that. But as long as you pony up that C note, you have a welcome space here on the show. We're that easy.
Indeed.
So joining us this week in a surprisingly long list of guests before and coming, please welcome to the show, Off.
Oh, that's me.
That's you.
Everybody.
You're here.
That's your cue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's me off. What do I introduce myself?
Sure. Yeah.
As much as you're comfortable with.
Tell us, tell us a bit about yourself.
Absolutely fine. I'm very comfortable with myself. No, a lot of people might recognize my name. I'm off. I'm one of the admins and writers over at the Sonic Legacy fan comic, and until recently, I was one of the people helping manage the Rally for Sally account. I'm sure you've all heard me ask questions related to or make comments about that happy little fan page that's floating around on Twitter. But yeah, that's me. I'm that guy. Hi, how you doing?
We're good.
We're good. I'm good. Everybody's good.
I know now that we're actually on air, I'm just kind of like, huh. I mean,
no, it's good. It's good.
Before, I guess, like I said, I have a tendency to ramble. I already am noticing myself beginning to do that. Did either of you two, fine gentlemen, have any questions for me before I say any more times and get into what I wanted to ask?
Well, I mean, we don't want to put anybody on the spot if they don't want to talk too much about themselves, or we'll certainly save time at the end if you want to plug any projects or things that you want to promote. But if you want to tell anyone who's listening a little factoids about yourself, go for it. If you don't want to talk about you, that's fine. We can move on to something else.
Yeah, sure. I guess. Why not? I mean, I've noticed a habit. With God, I say way too much.
Don't think about it too hard. It's not. You'll just get it. You'll just get in an endless loop. So it's cool. Just chill out. It's cool.
In some of your previous videos with guests, I've noticed that they like to start off by talking about their part in the fandom, what got them into the fandom as a whole and stuff like that. So I suppose I could start off by giving the world, everybody out there on YouTube, hi YouTube, my background in that, because it's a little bit more interesting than your typical, oh, I grew up watching the cartoons, or oh, I grew up playing the games, because I actually didn't. I was aware of Sonic the Hedgehog, but I grew up in a Nintendo household. Sega Genesis bad, Super Nintendo good. Now, my cousin who lived up the street happened to have a Sega Genesis, and he had Sonic and Sonic 2 on it, and I regularly played those games over there at his house. But I would not say I grew up as a Sonic the Hedgehog fan child. I was aware of the animated series, but I didn't know there was a difference. I did not realize that there was that significant of a difference between Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Underground. As a matter of fact, I would catch one just randomly on a Saturday morning and wonder, well, where are the other characters? Why are they not in this episode? Because I was blissfully unaware that these were entirely different continuities. And that's actually one of the kind of things that put me off from the franchise, because when I was younger and I tried watching this cartoon about this blue hedgehog who runs really fast and blows up robots, I couldn't get into it, because with there being so many different canons, even back then, with there being so many different canons, and the cartoons not really resembling the games that were available, my poor little child brain at the time, like, couldn't put it all together. So I was just like, I'm just going to go watch Transformers because that makes a lot more sense to me. Car turns into robot, they shoot each other. That's it. That's all you need to know. Even growing up, I had a lot of friends who were into Sonic growing up. I had this a friend in particular. I specifically remember him bringing over. I say specifically, I'm thinking about it. I want to say it was Sonic Heroes. It was the one on the GameCube, and that was my introduction into the 3D Sonic games. I think I skipped the adventure games. Again, I wasn't a big Sonic game player back in the day. So I remember him bringing his GameCube over and having this Sonic game and being like, "Hey, yeah, I know that's the dude from the Sega," and he put it in, and he was going to do a one night. He was going to play through the whole game in one night. Like, yeah, we're going to stay up all night playing this game. And I remember within the first 30 minutes of it, just being so annoyed at the voices, the character rotation, the saying the same quotes every time. I remember being like, this game seems dumb. It's like, how can you play this for hours on end? So for the longest time, I really wasn't what a lot of people would consider a Sonic fan. I remember seeing the comics when I was younger. I would go to the mall. I would hang out at the arcade. I would waste way too much money on Soul Calibur and Dance Dance Revolution. Just let that image sink in for a little while. I would go to the bookstore. I've always loved comic books. I've always been a cape comic fan, particularly Marvel. Love me some Marvel. So I would see, Sonic the Hedgehog comics. This was in a time when Archie was still in production, when Archie was still new. Um, and again, I would attempt to get into the comics. I would pick up the odd issue and I would read through it and I'd be like, yeah, okay, let me give this a look. It's a comic. There's Sonic, there's his friends, they're fighting robots. Yeah, this is what's going on. But it was the art style. It was the art that threw me for a loop, because back in the day, during the early ages of Archie, some of the artists' styles were so vastly different that from one issue to the next, just going by the visuals alone, just going by the art, it felt like an entirely different comic. So again, it was hard for my um, brain to really establish, to get into this, because it was, from one week to the next, or from one comic to the next, because you got the Sonic the Hedgehog comics here, and then right beside it you got Sonic Universe, and then right beside that you have, the Knuckles comics, and they were all so vastly different that I couldn't even, accept in my mind that they were from the same franchise, that they all ran together. So I ended up, for the longest time, not getting into it. It actually wasn't until the very end of the run, until the reboot era. I'm talking right at the end, like the last couple months. I happened to catch the last couple issues, and thanks to the balancing of the art, everything having a much more like standardized look, or whatnot, and it might have even just been the characters themselves. I read through a few comics, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is actually kind of cool. Maybe I'll start catching up on these. Maybe I'll start reading them. And then a couple months later, I found out that the series had been canceled, and I'm like, well, crap. But thanks to the wonders of the internet, I've been able to since go back and read the entire Archie series, including the side comics, the Sonic universes, the Knuckles comics, a bunch of the mini series and one-offs and whatnot. I haven't personally played many of the modern games, many of the newer games, but I've YouTubed them. I've done playthroughs, I've done lore videos, I've spent hours on the wiki, browsing different threads, joining different servers, all this kind of fun stuff. So my entrance into the Sonic fandom isn't a long term one. I did not grow up Sonic. It actually wasn't until my adult years where I was able to sit down, focus on what I was doing, go through all this material that had been collecting over the last 20 something years, and finally go, okay, now I see what's so interesting about it. And now here I am.
It's that is one heck of a journey. I do kind of appreciate, one of the things I appreciate is the different ways people have entered into Sonic fandom. Either they were here from the beginning, kind of like me and Ian, or, they just came into it. And that's, either one is cool, and either one is totally valid. So, yeah, excellent.
And it's a perspective that's completely alien to me because I grew up on the books. I started in like the early miniseries, early number 30s. So I was there for all the shifts in editors and writers and themes and all the drama of the fandom as it went through all these various ages, being part of the inexperienced kids who were really entitled and on the internet for the first time, and then being on the receiving end of the children who have very, very passionate opinions about the little blue hedgehog. And so to come at the book at its conclusion and seeing it all as one big tapestry rather than hopscotching across stones in the river is just a very different outlook. And it's interesting to me. I kind of wish I could step back and see it through your eyes, see it as you see it.
I don't know about that. No, see, I was actually aware of that, and I guess this is good a time as anyway to segue into me talking about you instead of myself. That's one of the things I actually didn't become aware of until later on. Now, see, again, I came into the series blind. I came into the comics blind. I had no expectations. I had no insight. I didn't know any names, like artists, writers, stuff like this. I didn't know who was who. I didn't know Carl Ballers from, anybody. I didn't know any names. So I began reading through the comics, and I noticed just for me, reading the comics, that I didn't really start feeling invested in them until about the mid 100s. The first half of the series, it just failed to catch my attention. It felt very episodical. Like each issue was just it was like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like each issue was its own self-contained little story. Nothing really happened. Nothing really felt important. And it wasn't until up to about the 100s, the early 100s, the mid 100s, that I started getting into the stories, that I started getting into the characters, into what was going on. And by the time I reached the Genesis waypoint, the reboot, and everything happened, I was really into it. When I got to the reboot stuff, I was like, yeah, this I like where this is going. Only to then remember, oh yeah, this series is canceled. I already know how it ends. That was a bad feeling. So it wasn't until later that I learned that this same person, because I read all the little crap at the end. We like I'm in this other group. I can talk about this later. We're actually reading the Archie comics. We're doing a YouTube series where we're going issue by issue. We're reading them. We're talking about them. We're making fun of certain things, stuff like that. So we read the fan mail sections, and when I ran through the comics, I would also read the fan mail, look at the stuff at the end. So it was interesting for me, as somebody getting into the series, to see that this person who had written into the comic all these years ago was now the person writing the comics that I'm reading and getting into. That was just somebody coming into the series blind and not knowing anything about anybody. That was fun to find out. It's like, oh, this Ian Flynn person, this is this same guy back here, this 100 issues ago, that was writing these funny letters into the comic. So you were a fan before you were a writer. This is something I actually have spoken to Kyle and some other people about. Well, that's I personally think that that's really neat. Um, that you personally you went into the fandom again, comparing our introductions into the fandom. You were always into it. You were reading the comics basically from the very beginning. You were writing into the comics. You were talking to the official comic people, asking questions, doing this kind of stuff, which has eventually led to the point where you've come full circle and you are now that person who other people, pick your brain about the comic. So looking at it from my point of view, your story is actually really super interesting.
I'm glad you think so.
So
I've been there
know,
the whole time. I've
yeah.
lived it. It's kind of mundane to me.
Yeah, I was going to say some people might disagree with me, but I certainly I think that it's a pretty interesting progression of going from the fan writing fanfics and sending letters into the comic to the person who is the or one of the head editors of the comics for I don't even know how many years has it been? How many years has it been since you wrote your first comic?
Well, first, let me specify not editor. I don't have that level of control. Just
Well,
I've
no,
been
no,
one
no,
of
no,
the
no.
primary writers.
Yeah.
But fuzzy math, I think it's been about 15 years now.
And see that in itself is another point. You don't see you don't see very many comic writers who write for the same comic, who write the same characters for that long a period of time. There's some, you could name names or whatever, but that in itself is kind of an accomplishment.
Yeah, that you do not see that too often. There was a panel I did at I think it was WonderCon maybe about licensed comic writing and talking about gigs and whatnot. And I was talking to the then writer of the new Mighty Morphin Power Rangers book and saying, I can't believe how much latitude they give you. He says, yeah, I've had to fight for so much of it. How long have you been writing Sonic? And at that point, I think it was like 12 years or something. And I just tried that number out, and everyone else in the group just kind of stopped and stared like suddenly the Yeti had stepped down from the mountains and you got a good look at it.
It does seem to be extremely rare that a writer or any creative really sticks with a specific comic series and or even just a character for that long.
I mean, I'm aware that you've written other stuff. I've read plenty of your other stuff. The Mega Man comics, Transformers, um, just some of the other stuff you've written for some of the other people. I know you are more than just the writer of Sonic the Hedgehog. But when anybody who knows your name talks about you, it's Ian Flynn, the head writer of Sonic the Hedgehog. And I do personally believe that is a title, that is a claim that you have definitely accomplished over your many years as a writer. Yeah, everybody calls me an Ian Flynn shill. I mean, I'm unbiased. I like his writing. I'm not I'm not even trying to say I don't or anything like that. Um, yeah. So I guess before I get too deep into that, I can ask some other questions about the comics and about stuff like that. And if I could just pick one question to ask, what would it be? Okay, here we go. So recently, within the last few BumbleKast episodes, you were asked a question about killing characters off. I liked your answer to that one. I liked some of the points you brought up, some of the stuff you said, about how more or less some characters are killed off for plot related purposes. Sometimes characters are killed off because of legal purposes, like licensing and whatnot. You can't use the character anymore. Sometimes characters are killed off for shock value. I believe you said that you didn't like when characters are killed off specifically for shock value, or for anything like that. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. You can correct me if I am, but coming off of that, coming off of how you answered that question, I would ask, a lot of people, one of the biggest critiques and complaints I've seen people make about the IDW, about the Zombot, the Zombot virus arc, is the amount of characters that were, I'm using air quotes, you can't see them, killed. The amount of characters that were infected, which I guess some people equate to being in story death or something like that, and how a lot of times it was perceived to be for nothing more than shock value. Oh, here's this character, oh no, they're infected. Here's this character, oh no, they're also infected. To the point where so many characters we're getting infected, which a lot of people refer to that as character death. I personally disagree with calling it that, but just for the sake of the question, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about those kind of accusations? How do you feel about people saying that so much happened to so many characters in such a short period of time that it kind of lost its value? It's like you it got to the point where we just expected to see somebody get infected. It wasn't even surprise anymore. It was just, oh, who is it this week? Who's on the cover? Who's gonna get it? How do you what do you think about that? What was your thoughts going into that arc, writing it the way you did?
It's okay. So number one, character death in a narrative versus a zombie apocalypse style story are different things. I mean, at the core, I think the argument still remains the same, but you're going in with different expectations. If this is like your standard Kate book and the female love interest gets fridged because the main character needs to have angst for 3 months, that's totally different than your Walking Dead, your Dead Rising, your any pick a zombie thing. That's a different approach to character death. Two, if you honestly went into a Sonic book expecting this to stick, I don't know what to tell you. There is a degree of investing into the narrative, but this is a licensed book. If you honestly thought that we were going to kill off game characters, there's nothing I can do for you. That is the balancing act that you have to do with a licensed book, is tell stories with characters that can't really be changed, but do it in a way that's still engaging. And so with a story like this, it is the tension of, who's going to be okay for the duration of the story. But anyone who didn't think there would be some kind of return to status quo was fooling themselves. You have to. I wish I could have that level of naivete. I cannot even conceive of not thinking of that outcome. But that feels like I'm shifting the critique onto the critiquer, and I don't really mean to do that.
That's fine, because I actually agree with what you're saying, and I'm glad you used that specific terminology, the status quo, because that's actually the same argument that I use whenever I get into conversations with these people about this kind of stuff. It's a long running comic trope that no matter what happens to a character, no matter what happens in a story, at some point, everything returns to status quo.
I mean, if you have
in comics are rarely permanent these days to begin with. And again, like you pointed out, in a comic like this, if you go into it really expecting, oh no, there's going to be permanent loss to these licensed characters, you're not going into it with the right mindset to begin with. So of course you're going to come out disappointed.
And the argument that comes from that is, then what's the point of reading the book if nothing's going to change?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is because you enjoy the adventures of the characters. You enjoy the characters themselves. Yes, it's clear that the infected are going to be cured by the end. That's not the story. The story is how do they get there?
To that point. Yes, thank you. I'm glad I'm the only one that feels that way.
With Kate books, I think it's a little more frustrating because they don't necessarily have to be in the status quo. They are a property that is owned by the company, and they can take it in a direction. And the revolving door of death there feels cheap because the maintenance for the status quo feels like it is unearned. It is a rollback against something that they could do something with. A licensed book like Sonic, IDW doesn't own Sonic. I don't own Sonic. So whatever Sega does, that's kind of the tune we follow. That's a completely different kettle of fish. As for what characters and how they went, one of the things that I wanted to do when constructing the Metal Virus arc was to remove that sense of plot armor. I mean, yes, if you step away and look at it objectively, everyone will be okay at the end. But to give that sense of drasticness, of that dire repercussions, you have to play with those expectations. Everyone would go into this book expecting nobody's going to get hurt. I guess that's the big thing. Nobody would expect the characters to be altered in any way. And that's what I was building off of. That's why Sonic gets infected first. Because the title character, who is infamous for being immutable, is infected and has to deal with that throughout the course of the book. And that became kind of and it was also a way of nullifying his impact, because Sonic is always the hero. He is always the one who's able to succeed through brute force alone. And he is robbed of that in the story. He can no longer whisk his friends to safety. He can no longer just bash the enemy into bits. Anytime he attacks the enemy, he makes things worse for himself. If he attempts to save his friends, he's making it worse. We've neutered his capabilities as a hero in the typical scenario, and that's where the interest lies. How does the hero overcome things when his usual tool set is removed? And from then it's incremental escalation, so that you think, okay, it's just Sonic. Well, the rest of the cast is okay. Oh no, they infected Charmy. They infected a child, the innocent one. That's pretty dark. And then, so when Cream comes along, enter that story going, well, is she safe? They already took out Charmy. So does that mean Cream's going to be safe or not? Is she going to get out of this issue intact or not? Shadow comes along. That wasn't necessarily handled the most gracefully. That's been talked to death.
I thought it was handled fine, but that's just based on my opinion of the character.
I wasn't satisfied with it, but you have someone who is Sonic's caliber and could quite possibly, again, have the plot tools to end this, and now he's removed from the scenario. Okay, the heroes don't have him to fall back on. How are they going to save the day? And by I guess around Vector's infection, the shock value has worn off. It has been established that no one is safe, no one is sacred, and you get a couple.
I think that was established when Big got infected. When we saw Big get infected, that was everybody's. If it can happen to Big, nobody's safe.
See, at that point, I was shifting it away from removing the sense of protection and moving more to the poignant moments. Like when Vector gets infected, it isn't, oh no, he's infected. It's that he is being a total boss and taking one for the team so they can escape. When Tangle is infected, it isn't so much the shock of, oh, Tangle's infected. It's that she is making the sacrifice play with that ticking clock going up the tail. You know it's going to happen and you can't stop it. That is the drama of the moment, not the infection, but the inevitability of it and the heroism in the face of it. Big story, he's the goofy side character. Here is this kind of review of the series up to this point in this lighthearted way. And then there's that poignant end where his sacrifice to be with his friend has cost him. That stops being about the shock of being the infection. It's the shock and the poignancy of the individual characters. And then by that point, the idea of the infection is no longer as ominous, I guess. It's kind of become a stated fact. And that's when we shifted gears into the Deadly Six. Because now it's not an issue of can we manage the crisis? It's an issue of they are systematically ending the world. How do we stop them so that we have a way to save the world? And at that point, the characters that fall are more of an attention to show the power of the Deadly Six, who honestly, up to this point, aren't that threatening. That was one of the reasons why I included them at the tail end. One, because they logically made sense as a way to escalate the stakes, to remove Eggman's position of safety. And part of it, too, just because I want them to be viable. I want them. We have six.
I want to like them. I want.
I don't really, because I don't like their designs. I don't like their gimmick. I've kind of grown on Zavik, but I really am not a fan of them overall. But they are in my tool set. And, you can't have Eggman every single time. Rough and Tumble serve a purpose, but they'll get old too. You need to mix it up a bit. And here's the material. Let's use it. Let's do something with it. So let's actually make them deadly. Let's actually make them heinous and hateable and, villains that when they show up, you're like, oh, they're going to be a problem. There's a very specific reason why I had Xena push Cream into the Zombot Horde. I want you to hate Xena with a burning passion because she is a complete and utter bitch. And how do you know this? She pushed a screaming child into zombies. There! She is deadly. She is evil. She is a little more than... She isn't just sitting there checking her nails and having catty remarks in the background. She is doing bad things. She is a villain. She can be villainous. So...
I like the Zombot art for the most part. My only complaint would be the length of it, but that mostly came from the fact that there were multiple issues that that basically took time during the same in world period of time, just events happening from different characters' point of view. So anytime you have something like that happen in a comic, it is going to make things feel a little stretched out. But overall, it was actually one of my more favorite arcs. Again, you mentioned Tangle, her infection, her going out like a complete boss. I like that issue, and it was Adam. Adam was the one who did the art on that issue, correct?
Yep.
I believe so. Yes, he did an absolutely fantastic job. I've always liked his art, anyway, but he did in above and beyond on that particular issue. Up until that point, me personally, other people can disagree. Everybody has their own opinions, but it's my turn to talk about mine. My opinion is up until that point, Tangle felt like an outsider. She was the new kid. She helped, but she was still the inexperienced, unproven, untested new kid. That particular issue was her moment. That was the moment she went from being the new kid to one of them. That was that issue, that sacrifice, that her stepping up to the plate and saying, look, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out big. That to me was made me like her character so much more than I had at that point, which I always had. I've always liked her character, but that particular issue, loved how y'all handled that. It was just so. I'm not going to say it brought a tear to my eye, but if a comic ever did, that might be one of the ones. So yeah. I really liked it. I think it was well written. All of these points that you're making with me asking about this, it actually goes in line with my thoughts on it as well. I've had these discussions with people before, so it's nice to hear that that a lot of these points I've made to other people about why things happen like this, or why it was written like that. You're now more or less confirming for me. So haha, good for me.
And I mean, that was the technical side of things. That was my thinking in the construction of everything. Whether or not it works for each individual reader, your mileage is going to vary.
People,
like I can explain it as much as I want, and if somebody reads
but
it
if
and
you
they
don't like the
enjoy
writing,
it,
then you just don't
you
like the
just
writing.
don't. I mean, there's nothing invalid about that.
Yeah, that happens all the time. It's like, hey, why did you do it like this? Well, this is why I did it the way I did it. It's like, well, yeah, but I still don't like it. I mean, there are plenty of people out there like that. And all you can say to those kind of people is, hey, sorry, you don't like it, but the comic isn't being written just for you. So, that's just how it goes sometimes. There are people that like parts of the story that I don't like. And to them, I say, hey, I'm glad you like that part. I don't. I'm going to go read this part that I do like and leave it at that.
And you make a fair point about it being kind of long. It did go longer than I intended. A lot of my old Archie stuff went on for a long time. And with IDW, I've been making a concentrated effort to be more succinct. Like year one was 1 year on purpose. I did not want to go over that. And I didn't want the Metal Virus saga to go quite as long as it did. But part of it is it has to fit in neatly into the 4-issue trade format, which affects the flow a little bit. And I also didn't want to rush things where I could. If you've got the Deadly Six and they are new to the book and they're new to a lot of people because not everyone played Lost World, you need to establish them. And I wanted the extended cast to have their moments to shine in each one of these confrontations. And that's a tall order, and you can only go through it so fast. Yeah. The solution would have been to dial it back, which is perfectly viable, but I want to play with all the toys. I want the SBO fans to have their SBO moment. I want the Cream fans to have their Cream moment. I want the Tails fans to have their Tails moment. And there's only so much time in the day.
Not the Shadow fans. They don't get
Shadow fans. Shadow fans are starving right now. I'm so sorry, guys.
No, see, I like that kind of writing though. Me myself, whenever I create material, I'm a long-winded writer as well. I do long plots. I know as a writer, I'll know where something's going when I start. Anybody who happens to be reading the thing I'm writing might not know where it's going, and to them, they get a sense of where is this going, But it's the long story. It's everything happening leading up to a certain point that I already know is going to happen, and everyone reading not knowing that along the way, going, when are we going to get there?
Right. And the balancing act for any kind of long form narrative, any kind of extended payoff, is you have to make the trip interesting. And if the promise of it's going to be good at the end only holds so much water. If you're going from point A to point B and you're getting real tired in the middle, there's no reason to stick around.
If you're taking your kids to Disneyland and the car doesn't have air conditioning and the seats are all tore up and there's no snacks, by the time you get there, they're not going to have any fun.
Exactly.
That's just the longest short of it. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. That's what I'm saying. I agree with that. I personally, and again, I can only say my opinion. There's plenty of people out there that disagree, and I'm sure they'll let their opinions be known. But I prefer that over short, self-contained stories. You mentioned trades, like 4 issues. If you have a story that takes place within 4 issues, and then wham, bam, bang, that's it, it's done. Me personally, I can't get terribly invested in that, and unless it's side content like the Tangle and Whisper stories. Okay, this is something that happens off to the side, during the events of this larger story, but it's its own self-contained little narrative. 4 issues, that's long enough to show, okay, this is what's going on, this is how they handle it, this is how it ends. But that's side content. If the main comic were written in a way where every story, every plot from beginning to end happened in 4 comic sessions, I would probably get bored. I mean, how would you? I don't even know how you would go about writing so many short, self-contained stories like that. So when I see people complain about Ian writes these long, drawn-out stories that just take so long, and there's all this stuff going on, I'm like, you don't like that? Is that not how you read things? So it's just always interesting to compare opinions in a fandom, to compare, what I like versus what somebody else likes, because we all like things differently, and not everybody likes the same thing, and that's okay. It's just throwing that out there. That's okay. The only other question, I don't know how long we've even been going on here. Y'all stop me whenever I run out of time or whatever. But staying on the topic of shock value and character deaths, the other biggest one that I see get brought up that I like debating people about, and again, you can either confirm or deny the points I bring up. Now that I'm actually talking to you and you can confirm or deny these things, is a lot of people, and you've heard you've heard these conversations plenty of times by now too. Love to bring up the Sally Acorn quotation, air quotes, death. Um, and that's another one that I feel, was done for shock value with foresight. Again, it's like you already said about this question. You know, anybody that actually thought that character was going to permanently die, it might have been slightly more plausible then than it is now. But it's like if you really thought that her getting gunned down by turrets off screen as the screen was fading to white with this big ominous event going on was a situation that wasn't going to rectify itself, you were probably fooling yourself. But a lot of people would argue that, oh no, Ian Flynn killed Sally. Not only did he kill Sally, but he killed her twice. In my argument to those things, always is going back to using the term character death inappropriately, because if you kill a character off at the end of an arc, knowing that the situation or the comic itself is about to face a reboot, and that one or two issues later this character is going to be right back to status quo, that's not killing a character off. I mean, when you wrote it that way, you didn't see it as such. I assume.
Well, all right, let's deconstruct that a bit. The original plan for, I forget what issue that was, but that story arc was supposed to end with Sally's sacrifice and her robotization, and we were going to go from there. And then we had the Genesis event foisted upon us. That was not planned. And I was not happy with it because here was this big turning point that I'd been building towards, and now it's going to get offset by 4 months. And I remember I was talking with Paul a lot on, how do we maintain any sense of tension in that moment? And he was like, well, let's kill her off, and then she'll be right back, and Sonic can save, can alter things and save the day. I felt like it was cheap, but it was one of those concessions that I had to make. The art went a little more brutal than I intended, but it's a collaborative effort. That's not my call. So I'm not trying to shift the blame. I went along with it and staged it in such a way that it was supposed to be a shocking character death that was going to get reversed the next time over. I wasn't 100% pleased with it then.
It's not so much a blame thing. It's not that. It's that either way, because I've asked about the whole robotization thing and what was going to happen and all that stuff, and you've explained before that you did have a plan. You always had a plan. It goes back to people using the term character death inappropriately. That character being roboticized, that was not any permanent end. You had an end goal in mind to return this character to status quo.
So, she wasn't dead. She was altered. That's the point.
Yes.
The character was moved to a different state of being. She was still a active member of the story. When a character dies, they're gone.
Yeah.
They do not contribute. The Mecha Sally arc, the whole thing was that she was contributing to the bad guys. That's not character death in a literal sense. If you want to argue, her characterization was killed, that's another thing altogether. It's kind of like
I tend not to argue with people who try to say that, because that's a point beyond trying to argue with some people.
I mean, there's also the moment in Worlds Unite where, again, Paul wanted some kind of big, flashy, shocking event to make things feel more down to earth. And my argument was, you have the characters, facing their worlds getting fused. You care about the characters, you care about their well-being. You don't need a big flashy event. And he's like, no, we need to kill off somebody major to make it big and shocking. And I'm like, well, all right, fine. If you're going to make me do a shock value death, I'm going to make it so blatantly implausible to stick that no one's going to accept it. And that's why I blew up Shadow. Because
always Shadow.
nobody is going to believe that we blew up Shadow in a crossover event. But there you go. There's your big flashy character death. And yeah, it's
I can't
cheap
wait
and pandery, but
I can't wait until whatever next big arc, big event y'all have lined up where Shadow gets taken out within the first 3 issues. I'm so looking forward to that. He's too powerful. He's too powerful of a character to use. You can't build a plot around a character who's as capable, if not more capable, than the main character without him just being a broken plot device. You have to find some way to remove this plot device from the situation. And there's a whole group of Shadow fans out there with their arms crossed going, no, you don't.
Well, it's the Superman argument. How do you make a compelling narrative with a character who can literally do anything? And it's not a question of will he succeed. It's a question of how will he succeed? What do you put in his way that forces him to, think around the issue? If we're like Silver Age type books, if we're talking like Stardust, and it's like, oh, well, I modulated the speed of my hands, and thus the friction passed through space-time and awoke the conditions, so kryptonite no longer affects me. That's hand-wavy nonsense. That's not engaging. But, if, you put well, it's like the Metal Virus arc. Sonic himself is kind of broken in his abilities, but when you remove that from him, when he can't touch his friends so he can't take them out of danger, and where he can't hit things, it will only make him more sick. How does he deal with that situation when the usual tool set is gone? And that's how you address any powerful character. I agree that Shadow needs to be toned back a bit. He was born of 90s tryhard. That was what he was built off of. And just as Sonic's tood has had to change over the years to fit, I think Shadow needs to evolve a bit himself, but that will be Sisyphus and his boulder had an easier time.
Well, that's the fun thing about fandoms like this. No matter what you do, no matter what you write, somebody's going to dislike it. It's just, you know that better than me. I mean, I'm telling you, you've lived it for what you just said that was the last 15 years.
It's been a very hard lesson to learn. I will admit. I want to make as many people happy as I can, and I've had to accept the fact that it's going to land with some people and it's going to miss with others, and all I can do is the best I can.
To use that famous old Southern adage, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, you're aware of me and you have discussed things recently. You know some things. I mean, I'm dealing with it. You can't make everybody happy. When you try, you just wear yourself out, and you usually end up making less people happy. Sometimes you just have to just wave at the people that are upset, say sorry you're upset, better luck next time. That's one of the things about you as a writer, as somebody who's been doing this as long as you have, that I've certainly grown to respect, is how you handle critique, complaints, backlash, whatever fancy word you want to use for how some people behave towards you and your writing and your involvement. And it's something. I hope one day I get to the point where I can deal with things as well as you. I'm not there yet, but yeah, I'm gushing again. But I just like to let you know personally here, where the whole YouTube can hear me, that's definitely something I've always respected about you and your character. It's how you don't take the bait over stuff like this. You write a comic as best as you can see yourself writing it. You acknowledge that you have done things you wish you could do differently, or would have if you could have. And even then, in the face of some people who would brand you as the worst thing that ever happened to this franchise, you just keep trucking along. You just keep doing what you do.
Yep, that's all you can do.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, now that you have, I don't know, sanctified me as some kind of saint of patience, which I guarantee you, I just hide it well. Let's wrap it up. Is there anything you want to plug? Any shout outs you want to give as we bring it to a close?
Sure. Like I said, I work on a happy little fan comic out there, and I guess plug your ears. You're not allowed to listen to this kind of stuff. But if you guys are anybody out there is interested in fan content, look up Sonic Legacy. We have a website. It's soniclegacyonline.com. Real easy to find. We've already got several issues out, and they're full length issues. They're fully colored, shaded. We've actually got a YouTube channel where we have 2 or 3 of our issues dubbed. We have an extremely talented team. Again, all fans. But some of these people have absolutely no business working on a fan comic. Some of these people should be in the industry right now, earning a wage off of their talent. And I'm so grateful that they see fit to take time out of their busy schedules to help with this funny little comic about a hedgehog and a dolphin. It's nice to see people in the fandom willing to contribute and create. So if you have time, check that out. Again, I mentioned I was recently a part of the Rally for Sally campaign. I've recently left that post, just moving on to do other things, leaving folks to who it is. I still fully support the movement. I know you've heard about this, you've talked about it, you've mentioned it before in previous podcasts. I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. I love the concept. Whether or not the character ever does return to official media, I still think it's great for people to have a place to come together to show their support for the character. I would love to see the character return. If you ever get the green light to write her into IDW, or if Sega Hardlight ever decides to put her into the mobile games, I would be more than fantastic. But until that point, it's still nice to have a centralized place where fans can all come together and say, yes, we like this character, we want to see her back. So if you're a fan of the old Archie comics, if you're a fan of the character, if you're a Sally Acorn fan, get on Twitter, look them up, the Rally for Sally page, give them a follow, give them a like. Just show your support. You Ian have mentioned before that it's fan support that has made certain things happen. So there's no reason not to. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much me. I'm so glad I got the chance to talk to you like this. But just something I've wanted to do for a while, and am just glad I got the opportunity to do. And now I can just go back to asking you one question a week and having Kyle tell me to be good in the server.
Yes.
Not that I ever do anything bad or anything like that. You just have to tell me to be good to make sure. That's I want to clarify that.
Yes. We have to. Be good. Be good. Be
Well,
good.
you know what they say. You know what they say, and I'm gonna end my part on this note here. It's the long running joke is you can't have anything awful without AWF.
I was trying to avoid it.
Live by?
I was trying to avoid it, but you went there on your own, so hey.
Well, that's going to wrap us up for this guest edition of the BumbleKast. Thank you all for your patronage and for joining us. And as he said, be good. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And we'll see you next time with more BumbleKast.
Yeah, Northerners. Anybody who's from the North American continent, who lives anywhere north of Tennessee, you guys need to learn how to talk.
I didn't think I had that pronounced of an accent until I settled up here, and folks would give me a look for a second as we're talking and go, "You're not from around here, are you?" I'm like, "Nope." And then of course I'd put in a little bit of an affection upon the accent to make them feel a little bit better about having called me out on my geographical point of origination.
Giving him the Colonel Sanders treatment.
Exactly.
No, one of my favorite stories is when I lived in Colorado. Spent a lot of time up there. There was this one young lady who I worked with who every day she would ask me to say that thing that you say, and I had no idea what she meant. I didn't know if it was an ethical thing, a religious thing, but every day in the break room she would ask me, say that thing, that the thing that you guys like to say. So one day I finally broke down and I asked her, I said, what do you mean? What are you referring to? What thing do you want me to say? She said, that thing everyone says, that get her done.
Oh.
I said, we don't all say that. But since my return to the South, since my return to Mississippi, I've become painfully self-aware of exactly how much that particular line is used by people down here.
Well, isn't Larry the Cable Guy from like Nebraska?
He's not. That's not even his real voice, dude.
I know,
but yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure he's from one of the prairie states, so that's
yeah. Let's see.
No, I know he's very, very much a character actor.
He is from Nebraska. You are correct. Yep.
Yes, what all those Southerners say, all the way in deep South Nebraska.
You've been listening to the BumbleKast, a co-production of Bumble King Comics and the KNGI Network. Original theme music composed by Ken Coda Snyder. Remixed intro by T-Lopes. Find out more information, along with podcast feeder links, MP3 downloads, and more at bumbleking.com and kngi.org.
I'm trying. I'm trying terribly hard. I'm being self-aware not to use the word y'all too much, but it keeps trying to come out.
Pish posh, y'all is a fantastic word.
Y'all is the conjunction of you all, and the plural of y'all is all y'all. So let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a highly functional way of referring to a large group of people, and I will stand by it till the day I die.
Yeah. I'm not Southern, but it still works for me.